have more questions coming your way. In the meantime, let me turn to Professor Jessie Hill, Professor of Law at Case Western Reserve University. Professor, perhaps you can explain to us, I mean, Toni to some extent did, what will a ruling, whether it's for allowing access or blocking access to Mifepristone, what will it mean for millions of women in this country? In other words, why are the stakes so high?
Thank you. That's a great question. I mean, the stakes of this case are extremely consequential. As I believe Toni mentioned, medication abortion is the more common method of abortion. Over half of all abortions in the United States are performed using this medication, Mifepristone. And right now we are at a place where if the Supreme Court keeps the Texas court's ruling on hold, that medication will continue to be available. It's safe, it's effective, it's used by millions of women. It's a preferred method for millions of women. Or if it doesn't keep that ruling on hold and lets the ruling take effect, we're really looking at just absolute legal chaos. Honestly, folks in different states are not entirely sure what this is going to mean for them legally, and the FDA is really caught between a rock and a hard place because it's faced with conflicting rulings out of two different courts.
You're absolutely right about that. And Toni, let me turn to you. Realistically speaking, how quickly could these meds be off the shelves? Are we talking about days, months, years before they could actually take effect? Of course, having said that, that is if the Supreme Court rules in favor of restricting its usage.
Yeah, I think it's going to really depend on what specifically the Supreme Court says. But I think what will happen is that there will be a lot of confusion. It will become very complicated because this has never happened before. A court has never ordered the removal of a drug for the FDA. So implementation is going to be very tricky. You even have some lawmakers here in the United States, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, urging the FDA and the government to simply ignore this type of ruling, which in itself would be absolutely profound and very unlikely to happen. But you have these lawmakers who are saying this is politically motivated. Let's just ignore this ruling. What you're seeing instead right now, Asieh, is you have a number of blue states that are stockpiling abortion pill medication. You have states like California, Massachusetts, Wyoming State. They are putting aside stockpiles of not only Mifepristone, but also Mifepristone, which is the other drug in a pill abortion. Mifepristone can be taken by itself to induce an abortion, which is why some states are opting to stockpile that medication instead. And again, these questions about what medications could be targeted after this case raises a lot of concern. So we see these states stockpiling this medication. The big question, of course, is going to be if the FDA approval is revoked, are those states even allowed to then distribute the stockpiles that they have created as this backup solution to this problem?
Well, let's ask Professor Hill that question. Professor Hill, did you hear what Toni had to say about these states that are stockpiling these medicines? What's going to happen if FDA approval is revoked, if you will?
Yes, I did. And I was nodding because she's absolutely right. That's a very difficult question. And unfortunately, there is not a clear answer. So it's not only a question of what the FDA is going to do in that situation and whether there are consequences under federal law, but each state has its own set of laws about misbranded and unapproved medications and what you can and can't do. And we really don't know, again, because this is so unprecedented, how these medications would be treated under those laws, and so what the legal consequences could be. And quite frankly, some people are going to be looking to the politics of the state and to say, how hostile is my state? How likely is it that someone is going to take action against me?
And Professor, what is next in this legal process? Does it depend on the ruling that's going to come down today from the Supreme Court?
That's right. So the parties who appealed to the Supreme Court have actually asked the court for two things. First, to block the ruling and to keep it on hold while the appeal plays out. But then second, if the court doesn't do that, they've asked the court to take this case right now instead of letting the appeals process continue in the lower Fifth Circuit Court just take the case right now and decide it on an expedited basis before summer. And so really the court could go either of those routes. But if it takes the latter route and just decides to take the case now, but let the law go into effect in the meantime, it's really going to be several months of chaos while everyone's trying to figure out what exactly it means.
Yeah, including us here in the media. Our thanks to Professor Jessie Hill and, of course, Toni Waterman. Thank you, ladies.